He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Kia ora, nau mai haramai ki te auhuranga. Hello and welcome to Our Changing World. Ko Claire and Canon tēnei. The Summer Science series continues here on Our Changing World. I'm still fossicking around in the wide range of excellent RNZ podcasts to bring you more stories I think you might be into. This week, it's an episode of Thrift, the RNZ podcast with an upbeat approach to ways to beat the cost of living crisis and get the best from your money. It's produced and presented by Katy Gosset. There's a wide range of topics, from making your own household cleaning products to eating well on a budget. The episodes that have been most of interest to me have been those that dig into the psychology of consumerism and the marketing strategies that exploit this. This is one such episode called Why We Spend.
When it comes to spending money, there are necessities.
There's only three things that we humans realistically need, which is food, clothing and shelter.
Then there's some other stuff we don't really need, but hey, we buy it anyway.
Ooh, probably like little luxuries, little splurges at the supermarket.
Too many coffees. Every time I go past McDonald's, probably a bit too much.
And why do we buy them?
If I ever see those arches, I can't help but...
It's probably this creation of the need of like, oh, you've got to have this.
Marketing.
Yeah, marketing.
We're like putty in their hands.
Oh, the marketing. That's right. Kia ora, I'm Katy Gosset, and welcome to Thrift. So this episode is part one of a two-parter, and it's about why we spend. Next time we'll get into some personal challenges that should help us curb that spending, myself included. But first up, our saying, perhaps fittingly, comes from one of the world's wealthiest men, also one of its best-known investors, Warren Buffett. He said, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get," which I interpret as meaning they're not the same thing. So whenever we're looking at something to buy, even if we can actually afford it, we should be thinking, what am I really getting from this? And what is it really worth to me? Now, with me to tackle some of those tricky questions.
My name is Ekant Veer. I'm a professor of marketing at the University of Canterbury.
You might remember Ekant from way back in season 1 when we talked about supermarket shopping and some of the marketing strategies we encounter there. He's been in marketing since the early 2000s.
But very much in the space of how do we use marketing and our knowledge of marketing to protect consumers more than to sell people more stuff that they maybe don't need.
Ekant is also a consumer behaviourist, and he's going to help us dig into our spending psyche. So we're going to get into tip 1, or more like reason 1, or a group of reasons. But Ekant says, first of all, it's important to understand that all of these are underpinned by essentially a capitalist society where we are encouraged to spend and show that wealth.
Success is shown through consumption, and that it is good to spend.
So as we heard from people on the street, most of us, of course, are aware of consumerism, but we still find it hard to resist.
There are many people out there who are very mindful about their spending, but in a generalist sense, that is what capitalism tries to get us to do. Accumulate wealth, spend money, repeat that cycle.
There's nothing wrong with celebrating your success, but when times are tight, we do need to focus a bit more on what we hear a lot of these days, the difference between wants and needs, and marketers will try and blur those lines.
How much of our spending is linked to keeping us alive and maybe even thriving, and how much is linked to our identity and who we are trying to strive to become, and that's the stuff that marketers really love.
You're probably thinking, crikey, this is a bit of soul-searching, isn't it? To be fair, a lot of you are probably already watching your budgets and only spending money on things you need. But we may be more susceptible to what others think than we realise. I don't love the idea that I might be presenting myself as something I'm not. But again, I do have people coming around for a gathering this week, and I'm going to rush home and clean the house to present myself as someone a lot tidier than I actually am. So we all have the way we are alone or with our families, and then the way we present to others.
In marketing, we talk about both private and the public self. What are the things that I really want and are important to me and who I am in my own self?
Versus,
what is the portrayal of myself when I step out of? What are the things that I need to do in order to feel like I'm contributing to society or I'm successful in society?
some people are more geared towards their private selves, whereas others are of course motivated by how they're perceived, whether that's by society in general.
Marketers love that because we'll just tell you that this is a really high quality suit, this is a really high quality handbag.
Or by people they know.
I really want to make my ex jealous. I really want to impress my boss. Those are extreme examples, but we do this in some form or another.
For example,
I know I said this when I walked in. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that we might be filmed here.
that's because we're making a wee video to go with the episode.
I might not have worn a t-shirt rather than a collared shirt because I don't necessarily know if this is something that people are going to judge me on.
Another good example is the daily coffee, or the twice daily coffee, or the thrice. Well, you see where this is going. Thank goodness RNZ has a coffee machine, which indulges my minor addiction and has saved me a heap of money. Ekant also likes coffee, so much so that it recently prompted some domestic decision-making.
My wife put me on pocket money and it was horrific because she saw me spending way too much on coffees.
Part of it is that Ekant is hospitable and likes to shout people coffees.
Yeah, I'm a generous guy. I'll just chuck it on the credit card.
But that can get pricey.
Suddenly you've spent $20, $30 just on coffees for other people.
But it turns out that halting a habit and then analysing it can deliver a bit more than a few dollars back in your wallet. It can also offer some personal insights. So Ekant did accept coffees from other people, but
it just didn't align with my values and my identity of trying to be a nice person and using money as a way of say, this is me extending monarchy by buying you a coffee. And so that was tough for me.
So it fed into what you talked about. Not necessarily the desire to impress, but your perception of yourself. You're the guy who shouts a coffee.
For sure, for sure.
After Ekant mentioned this tendency, I jokingly pointed out that he could have bought me a coffee. And he reminded me that it was probably my responsibility as the host, which it pretty much was. I immediately felt bad because I had basically forgotten to offer him a coffee. I pride myself on being professional, so I guess I stuffed that up. Given the aforementioned coffee machine, I could even have been a good host without spending any money. So, my bad. Basically, this interaction revealed a bit about both of our self-perceptions. For the record, Ekant is a generous guy. He does still shout coffees, just not as often. But the next time we chat, it might be on me. Another trigger is, of course, mood.
Yeah, emotional triggers. If there's something rough at work,
We have bad days,
that would probably lead me to pick up a beer.
kind of blah days.
Just when I'm out and about and I feel like I'm stuck in a bit of routine and deserve a bit of a treat.
So it is kind of a little bit mood driven.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah.
Way back in our very first episode, we mentioned a well-known idea that you pretty much don't go shopping when you're hungry. But ideally, you don't go shopping for anything when you're tired, busy, stressed, angry. Feel free to insert any emotion here, because it often means we soothe ourselves with a purchase or two.
You can be tricked every now and then, but then you reflect on it and go, oh, that's why I did that. So yeah, I mean, I'm only human.
We've all done it.
I mean, I know, for example, I don't need to buy lunch, and occasionally I will. And I will justify it to myself with, well, I've got a really busy day and I didn't have time to make lunch.
This seems a good time to reveal my own guilty lunch secret.
This is the kind of thing that happens. Start to kind of lose energy, want to leave the office.
Ekant and I take a bit of a walk together so I can point out some of my triggers.
And especially when you feel you've deserved it, if you've had a couple of big meetings, jumping out and having a quick coffee and a decompress.
This is the beacon over here, the supermarket, alas.
To be clear, I only go to the supermarket a couple of times a week, but when I go, I think it's going to be cheaper than a cafe, and so I often end up buying something extra.
And you know what, I deserve a little bit of a sweet treat, and that looks nice, so you've got a pastry as well, and it all adds up pretty quickly.
And then there's the temptation of the nearby place that sells 3 samosas for $5, even though I can never eat the third one. As it turns out, Ekant knows all about this.
I know what the price is, yeah.
Oh, you know?
So, yeah, absolutely. Because every time my wife and I come shopping here, we will say, do you want a samosa? Of course I do. Do we need 3? No, of course we don't. But it's only $1 for the extra one.
But we're still buying them because of these ideas of justification and its close cousin, reward.
We know that if you've worked hard, you deserve to be rewarded in some way.
But it's the way we choose to do it.
Again, society, marketers in particular, have taught us that the best way to reward yourself is accumulation of stuff.
As opposed to,
I've worked really hard. I would really love to have 2 days off and just spend time in nature doing my own thing, which some people do, which is awesome. But a lot of people will go, I'm going to go and reward myself with a shopping spree.
then when you get to the supermarket, it doesn't help that you're overwhelmed by stimuli.
If you just were taking someone from 200 years ago into a supermarket, it would blow their mind. There's so much going on.
Sometimes we even reward ourselves for doing the shopping.
I know this is going to be a horrible shop. I can already see it. It's difficult, so I'm going to put something in there that I'm going to enjoy later.
Then if you splurge more than you planned to,
that sort of spend creep does pile upon itself, and then suddenly, again, reward becomes a justification for why you've gone above and beyond.
Some of those little tricks are hard to combat, but we've kind of always known they're there. In tip 2, we're going to go a little bit deeper into behavioural theory.
Very old concept coming out of Kahneman and Tversky.
That's Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Back in 1979, they gave us the concept of prospect theory, also known as loss aversion theory.
They won the Nobel Prize for Economics around prospect theory, but just proving or just demonstrating that humans are more likely to avoid loss than they are to be attracted to gain.
For example, say people are offered $25, but there are 2 options. You can just get the $25, or you can have $50, but you have to give $25 back. It seems that people prefer the straight $25 because they don't have to lose anything, even if the outcome is the same. In a broader sense, that feeling translates to people wanting to avoid any kind of loss.
When we're not thinking mindfully about every purchase, we will do what we can to avoid loss. And so you kind of go, oh, I'm really missing out if I don't get that. Or I'll be the only one who didn't bring a plate to that event. Or I have always had a glass of wine at the evening to wind down and I'm not going to have it this week. And so you kind of justify it very, very quickly.
It's pretty much like FOMO, or the fear of getting things wrong. And that same theory is often used in marketing, where people are triggered to avoid something that might harm them in some way. Here's another experiment.
They said, this is 90% lean meat. That was how they would describe a steak. And then they would have one saying, this is 10% fat. Now, the 10% fat was avoided like the plague.
Of course, there's no difference between them, but we're drawn to the one that appears less harmful.
And marketers utilize that all the time.
So the next time you pick up a product,
go and say, rather than what am I trying to avoid, what do I gain by buying this?
Then the other behavioural theory we're up against is sometimes called present bias. Basically the idea that we would rather have something now, even something small, than wait for a larger reward. This is a tough one. Ekant recommends some tangible way of watching that investment grow, even an old school jar.
Putting that cash into a jar, something physical that you can see, becomes really rewarding because you see that thing grow.
So now that we understand some of the forces that make us spend, tip 3 is about how do we combat them. Some of it is about buying mindfully, but that's not always easy.
Why am I picking this up? I need this for this purpose, and this is the best purchase for it. That takes a lot of cognitive effort.
We've talked briefly about how to avoid present bias, but what about prospect theory or loss aversion theory? Ekant reckons we can target that with what he calls the pain of payment.
Humans will do things to avoid how hard it is to pay something.
So we've learnt that we don't like losing things, but we really hate losing money. It's part of the reason we're so attached to our credit cards.
Because we never see the money leave our pocket.
Cash is a different story.
Physically handing over cash and having to carry the change and knowing that's all I've got left, that increases the pain of payment. And so when that happens, we become significantly more mindful about how we go about our spending.
It also makes you look harder at what you could be doing instead of spending that money. So in the case of Ekant's coffee meetings,
hey, it's a lovely day, why don't we enjoy it? Let's meet at the cafe, but then go for a walk.
Reframing the experience could also help deflect any embarrassment some might feel at not being able to shout someone else.
Money is used a lot of the time to demonstrate care and love in many cultures and many families. And so when someone can't do that, they feel very whakama about this. And so finding a positive way of reframing it is really good.
Another useful thing in the battle to save money, keep a diary.
Actually spending time writing these things down and reflecting on them. What am I feeling at this time?
Try not to be too hard on yourself.
Even if you feel like I'm a horrible human being for desperately wanting to buy that new dress or that new suit because I'm just trying to show off to someone else, write it down.
And then unpack the reasons for what you're feeling.
Where's that come from? And how important is that thing? And what are other ways in which I can do that?
And of course, over time our opinions change. So Ekant suggests writing a letter to ourselves. both our past selves.
So I am now 45. What would I say to my 25-year-old self? How can we make sure we don't remake the mistakes of our 25-year-old self?
And then casting forward another 20 years into the future.
What does the person who's just heading into retirement say to the 45-year-old self now? And think about what are the changes I can make now that maybe my 20 years older self cannot do.
So, quick recap. If you're looking at buying something, think about how it fits with your private or public self and who you want to be. Be honest about that. I'm going to try and be. Check your mood. Are you angry, stressed, sad? And is that affecting your decision? Keep a diary so you can see what's happening. Be aware that we really don't like to lose things or miss out. So look at how products are marketed or worded to tempt us. And then turn that idea on its head. Use cash and the pain of payment to spend less. And be mindful when you buy. In the great supermarket of life, we make decisions all the time. We pick up ideas like we would an expensive box of cereal. So if you're putting it in the trolley, just make sure it's what you really want. And now, we talked about personal money-saving challenges. Shall I put my money where my mouth is?
Yeah, let's do a challenge. It depends on what it is, but I'm sure we'll find a challenge that we can both agree to.
So that's next time. What kind of challenge are we doing? Will we succeed? To find out, you'll have to check out the episode. You can follow and listen to Thrift on your favourite podcast app or at rnz.co.nz. Many thanks to my guest, marketing professor and consumer behaviourist Ekant Veer. This podcast was produced and presented by me, Katy Gosset, engineered by Alex Harmer, and Tim Watkin is the executive producer of podcasts and series. If you've got a tip to share, you can email me at thrift@rnz.co.nz. Thanks for joining me. Ka kite.